If I will know, if I would know, if I would have known, must master the conditional. Must master the conditional. Okay, grammar. Let's see. Simple present, simple past, present perfect progressive. Ew. Ugh. Gerunds and infinitives, noun clauses, adjective clauses. Wait. Oh. Ha. Okay, I think I can get it. Yes. Okay, conditional. 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 Last chapter. The conditional. Okay, so listen, we're human, right? We have tremendous powers of imagination. This is one of the main things about us. And we need a way to talk not just about what's real, but about things that are imaginary, things that are hypothetical, because that's who we are as humans. But of course, when we are going to talk about these things, we need a clear way to indicate, okay, now I'm lifting off of reality and I'm talking about something that's just hypothetical. Your listener needs to understand that, and you need a clear way to indicate that to your listener. And the way we do that, of course, is the conditional. Now, the conditional, I say it as if it's something special and dear. And of course, really, a lot of people feel just the opposite about it. It's given nightmares to a lot of English learners. And the conditional is complicated. I'm not gonna lie, it's complicated. But we are going to break it into manageable pieces. I'm going to give you a way in so that you can feel one piece at a time and get it into your system. And then we will be able to add on because you'll be ready for the next piece. And let me also tell you before we get started that I'm going to help simplify this for you because I am going to take a lot of things out of the way. When people present the conditional, they usually make it more complicated than it needs to be. I'm going to get rid of the extra stuff that complicates it for you. And you're going to see that really the essence of talking about the unreal is not as complicated as you thought it was. I have a formula, and I've never seen anyone else present it this way. I'm not going to say it's a secret formula because it seems pretty obvious to me, but really, I haven't heard anyone else describe it this way. I think that when you get this little trick, this little formula, you are going to find it easy to know exactly what the right structure is when you need to talk about something unreal. So, I am really excited to get started with you, and I'm going to give you the first piece. So the first piece starts with a little story about a person I know who studies English. He's in Peru, and he studies English and speaks it with his small daughter. So she's learning English from her dad. And of course, he wants to pass on good English to his daughter. So he studies and he practices. And this is how he improves. Now, I'm going to get a little bit closer. And this is going to indicate that right now, I am describing something that is real, something that is true. And this is the first thing that you need to do before you talk about something imaginary. Be clear on what is real. What is real? In this story, the real situation is Pierre practices English. He practices. This is real. And so he improves. He practices, and so he improves. This is real. But let's imagine if things were different, okay? If Pierre didn't practice, the reality, he practices. But if he didn't practice, he wouldn't improve. 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 Can I do it in reverse? Yes. He wouldn't improve if he didn't practice. 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 Now, why did I get close to tell you what was real and then take a step back to tell you what was unreal? It's because this is how we indicate that something is unreal. We take one step back in time. If the reality is he practices, this is simple present. It's generally true. To indicate what's untrue, I take one step back from simple present to past. And of course, also, if the reality is affirmative, he practices, then the opposite of that, the unreal situation, is negative if he didn't practice. So you're doing two things. You're going from affirmative and present to negative and past. Okay, so this is what we do. Let's practice it again, because this is how we improve, right? So Pierre, the reality, always check the reality. The reality, he practices, and so he improves. But if he didn't practice, he wouldn't improve. 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 He wouldn't improve if he didn't practice. 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 But he practices, and so he improves. So this is the first step. You know a real story about a real person. He's actually the one who inspired this entire conditional series. And you know the story of Pierre. You know what's real, and you can talk about the opposite of that, something unreal, something hypothetical. And I want you to do this again and again. I want you to practice it, and it will get into your system. And then you'll be ready for the next piece. Okay, so listen, I have 2 more stories planned for you. But before we get to those, let's talk. Sit down, grab a seat. Okay. I just told you about a formula, and you actually saw me act out the formula in a real situation. But I know that it can be helpful. But I know that sometimes it's helpful to see something written down where you can examine it directly. And so let's take a moment to do that before we go on to the 2 remaining stories that I have for you. So, what is the formula? Well, first, let me tell you what it's not. So, the conditional. If you've been in some grammar classes, you have probably heard the conditional presented as conditional 1, conditional 2, conditional 3, and I'm sorry, what was I saying? No, it's okay, it's fine. I love grammar, I adore grammar. What was I saying? No, I'm just joking. Is it boring? Maybe a little. The bigger problem that I see with conditional 1, conditional 2, conditional 3 is that I just don't think it's the most helpful way to think about the conditional. I love grammar, actually, and I even love grammar charts. But in the case of the conditional, I just don't find this to be the most helpful way to think about the conditional. Conditional 1, conditional 2, conditional 3, even conditional 0. To me, that's not the most helpful way to think about the conditional. However, if this is the way you've been taught, if you like it, or if you're used to it, you can keep using it. It's not a problem. It is compatible with the formula. So these two things play nicely together. They can coexist happily. You can still continue to use this system, conditional 1, 2, 3, and also think about it in a different way, which is in terms of the formula, which I personally find to be more helpful. And also, before we look at the formula, there's one thing that it's always very helpful to keep in mind when talking about the conditional, and that is be very clear that the conditional has two parts. It has the condition, which is the if part, and the result, which is the would part. So it's very good to always have it clear in your mind that these are two separate parts, the condition or if, and the result or would. Okay, so now that we have those two things clearly separated, we're ready to look at the formula. So if we want to talk about the hypothetical, if we want to turn the real into the unreal, what is this formula? Okay, I think we're ready to look at it. So the condition and the result. First, examining the condition. For the condition, first you check reality, and then you take one step back in time. And that little operation allows you to produce an unreal condition. So let's do the condition part together. The first step is check reality. In our example, that is, he practices. This is simple present. When we take one step back in time, present becomes past, then you change it to negative if he didn't practice. And so now we have our unreal condition if he didn't practice. And then what about the result? Just would and a verb. So this could be he would go, he would do, he would buy, he would love, he would enjoy. But in our example, he wouldn't improve. So there you go. If he didn't practice, he wouldn't improve. Now, later we'll add a little more detail to the result half of this chart. But for right now, this is all you need to know, because right now we are working on talking about unreal things in the present. And by the way, the information you see here is also good for talking about unreal things in the future. So this is good for present, future, unreal situations. So let's keep it simple for right now, build a really strong, simple foundation, and after that, it'll be easy to add on. So, if he didn't practice, he wouldn't improve. Yay! So let's act out the formula again, using our example, and then dance the hook with me one more time. You ready? Okay. He practices, so he improves. But if he didn't practice, he wouldn't improve. 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 All right, I think you're ready. Let's add on piece 2. So we're learning to talk about hypothetical things, and let's stay with present hypotheticals for a little bit longer. So I have a new situation for you, and of course, before we talk about the hypothetical, we need to establish what's real. What's real in this situation is I have kids. Oh yes, I have kids. I have 2 kids, and so as a result, I do a lot of work taking care of them, and also I have a lot of love, laughter, and joy in my life because of them. So these are the 2 main things you get as a parent, right? A lot of work and a lot of joy and love. Yes? So, the reality, I have kids. But if I didn't have kids, yes, I have, present affirmative, to make it unreal, use the past tense negative, if I didn't have. So if I didn't have kids, many things would be different. Okay, let's think. If I didn't have kids, I wouldn't pick up so many toys off the floor. If I didn't have kids, I wouldn't clean up so many crumbs. If I didn't have kids, I wouldn't have the joy of watching them grow and develop. If I didn't have kids, there wouldn't be so much laughter in my life. So all of these results are flowing from the condition if I didn't have kids. Now, it's not necessary to repeat it. I'm repeating it because I want you to really feel it. I want you to hear it again and again, and hearing it over and over helps it become part of your system. If I didn't have kids, if I didn't have kids, if I didn't have kids, if I didn't have kids. So that's why I'm repeating it, but it's not necessary to repeat it. I can have this one condition that we are both considering and then just talk about the results, right? If I didn't have kids, I wouldn't pick up so much. I wouldn't cook so much. I would miss the joy of watching them grow up. I would be missing something really special in my life, yes? If I didn't have kids. Let's have a seat. I need to talk to you again because now it's your turn. I want you to think about your life. Think about a person or a thing that you have in your life and imagine how things would be different if you didn't have this thing or this person. So if I didn't have this person or if I didn't have this thing, wow, I wouldn't have, I wouldn't do, I wouldn't know, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't get. Only you can do this part. So take a moment, grab something and write your example down. And later I would love for you to share it with me. I'd love to hear your real example from your life of how things would be different if you didn't have this person or this thing. So I have one more situation in the present. This is right now for you to use to practice talking about the hypothetical. But before we talk about the hypothetical, we need to establish what's real. So this time the situation is about you. And what's real is that you are not here. You're not here with me. You're not here with me. You're at your house maybe, you're in your country, you are wherever you are, but you are not here with me. So, the reality, you're not here. But if you were here, yes, you are not, this time the real situation is negative and it's present, so you are not, present negative becomes past affirmative. If you were here. So, you're not here, but if you were here, wow, that would be great, right? If you were here, I would offer you some coffee. If you were here, you would meet my kids. If you were here, you would meet my husband. If you were here, you would meet my dog. If you were here, I would show you around downtown. If you were here, I would take you to some of the little shops that we have on the square. If you were here, I think you would really enjoy yourself. If you were here, we would do all of these things. So this is going to give us our next hook. Okay, are you ready? If you were here, you would meet my kids. Yeah? If you were here, you would meet my kids. If you were here, you would meet my kids. If you were here, you would meet my kids. If you were here, you would meet my kids. And reverse. You would meet my kids if you were here. You would meet my kids if you were here. You would meet my kids if you were here. You would meet my kids if you were here. Okay. So now you have your two hooks. Yes? These are your hooks. You've got a hold of the conditional with these two hooks. And it's your job to practice them every day because this is how you're going to get them into your system. And this structure is going to become part of you and it's going to start to come out automatically and even spontaneously. And at some point, you'll discover, wow, I'm using the conditional without even really thinking about it. And I know that I'm using it with the correct structure because if I ever have a moment of doubt, I can compare it to my hook. That allows me to get a hold of it again, and I can use it correctly, with clarity, with no hesitation, with no, I wonder if I got it right. No, you're gonna know. So these are really important. This is actually the most important part of everything so far, is practicing these two hooks. So I'm gonna do that with you now. And this is what I want you to do on your own every single day. So we're gonna do the first hook, which is about Pierre, right? You remember it? So here we go. If he didn't practice, he wouldn't improve. 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 He wouldn't improve if he didn't practice. 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 If you were here. If you were here, you would meet my kids. If you were here, you would meet my kids. If you were here, you would meet my kids. If you were here, you would meet my kids. You would meet my kids if you were here. You would meet my kids if you were here. You would meet my kids if you were here. You would meet my kids if you were here. So this is the most important thing you can do. Practice these two hooks every day.
Practice these two hooks every day.
You're going to be like Pierre, and you're going to practice, because you remember the reality about Pierre, right? He practices, and so he improves. But, you ready? If he didn't practice, he wouldn't improve. 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 He wouldn't improve if he didn't practice. 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 So really, what you have to do at this point is very simple. You practice your two hooks forward and backward every day, 8 times. And that's it. This is all you have to do to get them into your system, and you will love when you start to feel them coming out spontaneously. This is going to be a big payoff, and I'm really excited for you. And you will be ready very soon for the next piece. And we'll add on. And because you really have a strong foundation in what we've done so far, you're going to be ready for the next piece, and it's not going to seem difficult. It's going to seem pretty easy. So I'm very excited for you. You're off to a good start. Practice your dance moves every day. You will get your hook. You're going to get a good, strong hold on this structure, and you'll be able to use it freely, spontaneously. Yay. Okay, let's do it.